The dangers of misplaced expectations in marriage. Have you ever wondered the fact that expectations wrongly placed in the wrong person can also be a contributor to divorce in marriages? One of the most common but very dangerous pitfalls in marriage is this idea of misplaced expectations, specifically placing parental expectation on your spouse. When we enter marriage expecting our partner to meet emotional, sometimes even physical, God forbid, needs that were unfulfilled by our parents, we create a dynamic that leads to frustration, it leads to resentment, and sometimes it leads to bitterness. Yes, we know, and we've always said it, that marriage is a partnership, not a caregiving relationship. Can I say that again?
Yeah.
Can I preach in this place? And so your spouse is supposed to be your equal, not your parents. And when these lines get blurred, it often leads to unmet expectation and relational strain. In today's episode, we're going to be exploring the dangers of misplaced expectation in marriage, particularly when they stem from unresolved childhood needs. We'll discuss how couples can identify these things and overcome these patterns, and then allow God to fill the gaps that no human being can fill. Take a listen.
Too often, Nick, from a psychological perspective, we go into relationships looking to fulfill needs that our parents never did.
Right.
So the relationship is a means to an end of getting something you never got.
Right.
And the main things we're looking for from our opposite partner, we're looking for intimacy and love. We're looking for availability and presence. We're looking for trust and dependency. And we're looking for reciprocity and the ability to share. Those are 4 things you needed from your mother, 4 things you needed from your father. If you got both, you can love and you can leave. If you didn't get both, you might be insecure and unstable in certain areas.
That's powerful. That's more powerful than the 5 love languages.
You see?
You need to coin that and write a book on that.
And on top of that, Brother Nick, what the opposite gender parent did to you or didn't do matters most. See, my father could have been present. My father and I could have been intimate father-son, healthy. My father could have been trustworthy. We could have been able to share and exchange. But what if I couldn't do it with my mom?
Didn't get any of those.
Do you see that?
Right.
I'm going to look for a woman to do for me what my mother could not. You ever been in a relationship with a woman where you felt like you was more than a husband? You had to be the father too. See that? That's where that comes from, Nick. She had an unmet need. Daddy didn't do it. So now I need Nick to do this, and you weighing on me too much because I'm your king, but now you want me to be your daddy. I didn't sign up for both roles.
I'm your king, but now you want me to be your daddy.
I didn't sign up for both roles.
Welcome back to my Darling Bride podcast, powered by Refuge and Fortress Network. On this podcast, we dig, we discover, and we discuss precious gems for the building of kingdom, homes, and relationship. I'm Pastor Emmanuel Ludansi. I'm joined today by my own special bride, my own darling bride.
Hello.
And PK, all the way from Connecticut.
Hello.
I think I need to bring my own darling bride too on this podcast, so I can say my own darling bride. Yeah.
If you are yet to subscribe, go ahead and do so now. And please don't forget to comment, like, share this episode with someone that you believe will be blessed by today's message or today's episode. The Bible says in Philippians chapter 4, verse 19, and my God will meet all your needs according to his riches in glory. God. God will meet all your needs according to his riches.
Heavy on that.
God. Somebody said God. What that means is ain't nobody can meet all your needs but God. Ain't nobody can fulfill all your needs
but God.
Ain't nobody can be there for you at all times
but God.
Ain't nobody can fill the void that you may have at all times.
But God.
Somebody said, but God.
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 But God. All I need is a piano, and
At this point, MDB has turned into Sunday service.
Why am I saying that? Why am I bringing that up? Because this verse reminds us that not our spouse is not, let me put it that way, the ultimate provider of our emotional and spiritual needs. When we enter into marriage expecting our spouse to heal wounds from our childhood and act as a replacement for what our parent was supposed to do, was supposed to give us, or didn't give us, then we're setting ourselves up for failure.
For failure, right.
We're setting up the marriage for failure. What's that about?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And before we go further, let me just put it out there. What do we mean by misplaced expectations in marriage? We're talking about parent-child dynamics, right? Where you are expecting your spouse to fulfill the emotional or practical roles of a parent. You follow what I'm saying? And that creates unhealthy a power imbalance between the parent-child dynamic. We also have the unrealistic burdens that sometimes is placed on our spouses. Because you know what I mean? I remember when we first got married, right? When we first met early on in our relationship, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be my wife. I was having some expectations of my mother on you, not necessarily because I was looking for you to be my mom, for example, but I was expecting you to be like my
her.
mom.
Right.
Are you following what I'm saying? And that's good, but it's not the greatest.
Yeah.
Because it gets blurred, and there can be a lot of imbalance in that, right? So we have all these unrealistic burdens. And the truth of the matter is, no human being can be perfectly fit to fill the gaps left by another person.
Not at all.
Placing these expectations on your spouse will only lead to unmet needs and disappointment. The third thing that I mean by misplaced expectations in marriage is delayed healing. When you don't take the time to heal, you begin to look at your spouse to meet needs that only God can fulfill. And we avoid doing the personal work necessary for true healing and growth. Now, I want y'all to come in now. PK, let us talk about this, for example.
Right.
The man said, Dr. Umar said that what we need most of the time in relationship is trust. He said independence. He said reciprocity, meaning reciprocate what I'm giving you, give it back to me. You know what I mean? And the first question that I should ask is, what are some signs that you may be placing parental expectations on your spouse? Because we're talking about dangers now, the dangers of misplaced expectation. What are some signs that you could say some people are placing parental expectations on their spouse? Because do they know that they are? You know what I mean? Do you like how what does that even look like, right? How are you supposed to be able to say, have I been placing parental expectation on my spouse? Have I been messing up? Do I even know? What does that look like, baby?
I think it looks like, you know how we say sometimes there's some things, I think we've had this discussion at some point, where we said there's some things you believe a spouse should already know from training, from background. Like, I shouldn't have to tell you these things. I shouldn't have to show you these things. If you got training at home, if you had parents to train you, you should kind of already know these things, right? So coming to your husband's house or getting married or whatever the case may be, you shouldn't have that expectation of, I will learn it there, so to say, like my husband or my wife will teach it to me, you know? And you know, this topic is interesting, right? Because we have a saying in Yoruba, and I want us to break it down, because I want us to, because sometimes we get to blur the lines a little bit.
I got you. I have my dictionary. Let's go.
There's a saying in Yoruba that says, Ile oko, ile eko ni.
Go ahead.
Right?
Go ahead, baby.
I can't find that.
Go ahead.
As a woman, I've heard this statement many times. And that statement, for those that don't speak Yoruba, is pretty much just saying your husband's house is the house where you learn, right? Where you get some training.
That's
so
deep.
my thing is, if we as a culture, right? If that's the mentality, why would we then say it's dangerous to have such expectations on your spouse? Not necessarily like it might not be all parental expectation. Like, for example, you don't expect your husband or your wife to be how should I even say it? We'll come back to that because there's another point I want to make. But bottom line is, what I'm trying to say is, if that statement is made where it's like you go to your husband's house, you learn there, which, to be honest, on a realistic note, there's a reason why they say that statement, and I'm not going to say it yet because I'll come back to that. There's a lot of coming back I got to do. But what I'm just trying to say is that statement is made, right? So it almost contradicts a little bit this mentality of, well, you shouldn't look at your spouse like your spouse like your parents. You're not trying to look at them like your parents, but there are some things you are gonna learn in your marital home.
Yeah.
Now the question is it the same thing as what you learn in your parental home?
Yes.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So for me, I feel like, to answer your question, the first one, before I digress, but it's like, for example, feeling disappointment or resentful about the way your spouse comforts you, how you expect your parents to comfort you.
Yeah.
You kind of look at your spouse to do the same thing, kind of baby you a little bit.
Yeah.
So that could be a way of having that kind of expectation of your spouse.
And I think that's what I was. That's really what I was looking for in the demarcation I'm trying to make. We know that there are multiple types of love, right? The word love in Greek is split into like 4 or 5.
Right.
We have the eros, we have philia, we have storge, we have agape love, right? The eros love is the love between lovers. You understand what I'm saying? It's an erotic romantic kind of love. It's a romantic kind of love. Storge is the parental love, right? And I think we blur the line sometimes when we have a storge love expectation for our spouse. And what that looks like is that we are expecting our spouse to take on the role of emotional caretaker, like our parents would. We are expecting our spouse to prioritize our needs, our emotional needs, over their own responsibilities.
Right.
Like the things a mother or a father would do for their child. You follow what I'm saying? We sort of expect that from our spouse. And this is where it gets a little crazy, because like you were alluding to, you could say, well, but you're my love.
Right.
You're my husband. You're my wife. You're supposed to do these things.
I was just about to say that too. Because, right, there is a blurry line there where it's you're my spouse. Yeah. There's technically nothing wrong if you comfort me in some kind of way like that.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's like, where do we draw the line of parent and spouse?
So I think hearing from both of you, and I'm going to start from what Pierre initially, the proverb she made. I think it all comes from a place of understanding. When it gets to a point where expectations are being placed on each other from mindset or from an avenue where you think this is how your spouse is supposed to treat you because you had this kind of relationship with your parents, or your parents were supposed to give you this kind of emotional relationship, but they didn't give it to you. So now you're looking for that kind of relationship with your spouse. Now it becomes a burden, because look at what the man said in the audio we listened to. He said, I didn't sign up for both roles. Now, it is important for us to know that, yes, when you come, I know not many cultures would understand or believe the proverb you said. The goal of the proverb is not for you to come to your husband's house and be bossed around. Right? The goal of that proverb is for you to know that, first of all, coming to a husband's house, you must be open-minded, knowing fully well that you are coming into a new environment, you are coming under a different authority, and you must be open-minded to receive whatever it is that needs to be received, so that you can build a stable, loving environment with your husband. It's a partnership situation. So just like you are coming in with an open mind and you are submitting to an authority, your husband on the other end is coming also with a protective kind of love, to and also an open mind kind of love, so that he can also try to welcome you, and you both can mold each other to what would be best for each other. Now, when it comes to some signs, like PY initially mentioned, there, we have, constantly seeking for validation or approval, to mimic, what your parents were doing, their formations or whatnot. You talk about, I think you mentioned feeling resentment when they don't, anticipate me.
Same
Exactly.
emotional.
Well, I think it all boils down to understanding what each role is and how it needs to be played out. When both are able to understand where they stand, I don't think there should be a problem, because everybody is coming into an environment where we are growing to understand each other,
Yes.
to be better for each other, not for our parents anymore, because we are off their roof. We're not under their roof anymore, but we are now coming together. Both of us are learning as to how we can be best for each other.
Yes. The question, is, you see, the reason why I purposely wanted to ask that question is because of what we established. The blurred lines between
It's very
the
close.
kind of love I receive from my wife and the kind of love that I receive from my mother.
Yeah.
Or the kind of love that I receive from my father and the kind of love that I'm receiving from my husband.
Yeah.
It's very, very close. And that's why, for example, when a man wants to marry a daughter, right? The father is like, yo, I'm handing my baby girl over to you. Please take care of her, right? Because you're now passing on the right of caretaking to the husband.
And there's an implication in that statement.
There is, but the thing that and that's why I'm asking the difficult question of how can I identify in my marriage that I've, whether intentionally or unintentionally, put parental expectation on my spouse. In a normal scenario, maybe she doesn't mind. Maybe it's perfectly fine. Maybe he doesn't mind. And it's perfectly fine. And they embrace that. You follow what I'm saying? But then there are situations where your spouse will come to you and be like, yo, I'm not your mom, bro. I'm not your dad. Like, I am your husband. And the reason why we have to kind of clean it up and say, okay, what does this look like in a home, in a marriage, is because we, for example, all three of us that are here right now, we are conditioned to the glory of God to think in a positive light. You follow what I'm saying? Everything we're talking about right now sounds like all things equal.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But then when you have a abusive father, you follow what I'm saying? And then you get married, and your expectation is that your husband will begin to do the things like your father did. Cheated on your mom, beat on your mom and things like that, got angry, drank, and all of that stuff. And then you take that resentment on your spouse.
And these are valid emotional feelings too.
Exactly. And then you take that on your spouse, and your spouse has to constantly remind you, I know what you're doing. I'm not your dad. I'm not your mom. I'm not your, you know what I'm saying? That's what I said. In a perfect scenario, we are looking at it
you're right. I see where you're coming from. So number one, to answer your question, would be, picking from what you just said, expecting them to solve your emotional struggles instead of supporting you through them. based on what you just said, right? So the goal is you are either from the wife or from husband, there's whatever emotional struggle, whatever abuse, whatever situation that the person went through under their parent. Now you either and it could be positive or negative, right? It could be that this person enjoyed being overly protected, or being provided for with everything you could think of you need, and now you are in a relationship where we got to live on a budget, because that's the way our finances have been set up. And just naturally for you, because you haven't been matured enough while you're under your parent to understand what it really means to live on the budget. So now you're having trouble trying to understand why you can't get what you were getting, when you were under your parent, and now you're in a relationship. So I think that's the first thing when it comes to the signs, is when you get to a position whereby your personal emotional struggles, you are not trying to resolve it. Initially, when we started this podcast, we're talking about being dependent on God. God is the one that can meet all our needs, not your spouse. Your spouse can try, but the ultimate provider of emotions, of your spiritual needs, your physical needs, is God. So when it gets to a point where you cannot manage some of the struggles you have from getting out under your parents, and you solely put that expectation on your spouse to help you get out of it. They can manage the situation, they can help, they can support you, but when it gets to a point whereby you heavily put it on them, that if you are not doing well in that marriage, it's their fault, then that's a problem. Another thing that I want to mention before I pass the conversation back to you guys is becoming overly dependent on them for decision makings, or for practical needs that you can manage. When it becomes a thing whereby when you were under your parents, they pretty much do everything for you. They pretty much provide for you on every level. Every decision you need to make, they do it for you. It just comes natural. That's probably the family dynamics you came from. But now you are in a relationship whereby this person wants a partnership. Doesn't want to make any decision out of respect, or out of love, or out of the fact that he or she came from a home whereby they do the things differently, not because of anything crazy or negative. It's just that your family dynamics was different, your brought up was different, and instead of you both coming to the understanding that now, yes, we lived we lived a different family background, we had a different dynamics, but now we are in our own home trying to build our own dynamics, and we need to come to some understanding. How do we want to make this work? What works for you? What works for me? How can we blend it together? If there's no understanding like that, but you are now bringing what you are experiencing from your home, and you are adamant about the fact that this is how it worked for me, and this is how it has to continue, then it becomes a problem.
I kind of want to open it up a little bit more, right? Because you have the childhood trauma, the childhood needs that spill over to relationship and marriage in a negative light. But to kind of open it up even more, right? Where you notice that human beings, right? It's almost like we can't help ourselves, right? For example, you see the way your father is, you see the way your mother is. Somehow, some way, we find ourselves trying to either find a spouse like them, if we like the way they are, or not like them, Or sometimes unintentionally, even if we don't like the way they are, we find ourselves finding a spouse like our parents, just because based on what we're used to is how we formulate what we look for, right? That's human nature.
You try to date the same people.
Yeah, exactly. So now with spouse, and I can say this for example with my husband, I saw the kind of person and I laugh about this sometimes, we'll talk about it. So the kind of person my dad was, right? My dad was ambitious, he's a go-getter, he's somebody that's goal-oriented, he's focused. I mean, once he's laser focused on something, forget about it. He's strong-willed. Like once he's convinced of something, it takes God to unconvince him, right? It's not a coincidence that I have a husband that has similar traits like that. It's not a negative thing, it's a positive thing. As a matter of fact, when you asked me back then, what do you look for in a man? I would list those things, but it came from somewhere. Now, it doesn't have to be negative, it's a positive thing. So you want someone that's ambitious, ain't nothing wrong with that. You want someone that's goal-oriented, that's family-oriented, ain't nothing wrong with that. It's a positive thing. But you got to still be careful, right? Because then what happens is when you then find somebody like that, you have the same expectation for that person as you had for your father, right? As you saw in your father, exactly. Yes. Because this person has very similar traits to the person that raised you. So yes, this is my lover, this is my spouse, but somehow you tend to kind of, it could be intentional, it could be unintentional, expect certain things that or characters that your father has or your mother has, and then I'll give another example. A wife, a dynamic between a husband and wife. You have a man that loves the way his mother cooks for him. She throws it down for him in the kitchen. You then marry and now you're like, man, I need you to cook the way my mother cooks. But the issue is, I'm not your mother. I'm not gonna cook exactly the way your mother cooks. Even if she gives me a recipe, best believe there's still gonna be a difference. You understand what I'm saying? Because there's just something, I don't know how to explain it. There's just a difference in us that will still make that food taste different. I know how many times I've tried to make egusi, however you call it, egusi, like mommy makes it, like your mom makes it, and she has given me the recipe to the C. And as much as I've tried that recipe from A to Z, it still does not taste the same. You understand what I'm saying? And it's not like it then becomes you can't make it like my mother. No, how to cook. In fact, no, I'm not eating your food. That's the problem.
That is the heart of this episode. The danger of misplaced expectations in marriage.
Right.
Literally what you just said. You made food, you tried to make it like my mom would make it, but because it doesn't taste exactly like she does
come on, Johnny.
You are an incompetent, inadequate wife.
Yes.
Because of that.
That's
the danger of misplaced expectations. It can cause you to begin. So now, this is what I want us to do now. Let's start pointing them out one by one, all the dangers. One danger is it can cause you to begin to see imperfection in your spouse.
Yes.
In areas where you may have been blinded before, things where you didn't see before, now you begin to see them.
And I love that you pointed that out, because sometimes as kids, as children, you look to your parents, especially when you come from a home where you have both your parents are there. You know what I'm saying? You have a home structure like that. You look to your parents like they're perfection, because your parents shield you from seeing the negative aspect.
Shielded you.
They shield you from the negative aspect of their lives.
Yes.
On purpose.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Yes. If we have an argument or a discussion that we're going back and forth, we're cautious when the kids are around.
Absolutely.
Because we don't want them to see us in that light.
Yes.
But that shapes them into thinking their parents are perfect. So now you go into marriage with that mentality. Like, my mom is perfect. Why are you not?
So now the second danger becomes you have unrealistic expectations. What they showed you, the things, the limited scope that you saw, you now apply that to your own marriage. And then when you guys are now having personal problems that you're supposed to be addressing,
something is just not working right. We are not, all of a sudden, we are not compatible.
In another flip side, you see your
Vicky,
father.
I'm coming back to you. So start thinking. I need two dangers
that's
of unrealistic expectations.
You see a father that's abusive to your mother.
Yeah.
Unintentionally, you pick up that trait. your mom stayed
Mm-hmm.
because she has a reason as
Yes.
to why she dealt with it.
Yes.
Now you pick up the trait and bring it to your home.
Yes.
And now you're surprised that your spouse has a problem with it.
Yes.
You have the same expectation, but you don't have two heads. My mom dealt with it. Why can't you do
yes,
it?
yes, yes.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because you've seen that
Yes.
and you feel like, well, somebody can handle it.
Yes.
Somebody that I look up to can handle it. Why can't you handle it?
Yes.
Why can't you work and try to figure it out too?
Mm.
That's the mentality.
That's the
dangerous.
mentality that we are saying is dangerous. The danger of misplaced expectations.
Yeah.
And another thing I want to point out too, we're not talking about dangers of misplaced expectation, literally saying parental expectation, and spousal expectation, right? We're talking about your unique situation.
Yes, exactly. Because it
Placing
looks
your
different for
unique
everybody. Yes.
parents' expectation
Yeah.
on your spouse.
Yeah.
In other words, you are the one who knows your dynamic with your parents.
Exactly.
What we are saying is don't bring that into your home. Another danger of misplaced expectation is trying to emulate or build your home in accordance
Same way
with your parents.
Right.
But the danger
Danger.
in that is both of you are coming from two different backgrounds.
Yes.
And if you are only limited by the scope of your own parents' life and the way they did family, you wouldn't give room for your wife to bring her own thing too.
Yeah.
And say, okay, this is how we did it.
This is my understanding. I
you.
can't understand
You know
that
what I'm
because I didn't grow up in
If we're not,
You know what just came to my mind now is those who are mother's boy. How do they put that? Mama's boy. Or we have people who are parents' boy too, and that is the father and mother that is, or they are so much into their relationship that they are in his ears or in our ears at all times.
Yep.
And pretty much that this person is not trying to build his or her home in the way that works best for him or her and the spouse, but always listening to what the parents are saying or what the mom is saying. That's a big problem too. That's a huge problem.
Yes. So we've mentioned a couple of dangers now. Number one, it causes you to have unrealistic expectation of marriage in general, period.
Yeah.
It causes you to place unholy expectations on your spouses.
Unholy resentment.
It causes you to see inadequacy and imperfections in your spouse.
And also, like I said earlier on, over dependence.
It causes you to be overly dependent on your spouse.
Right.
What else?
Another way we could look at it is when you have a husband trying to play a father role.
Yeah.
He can mistake that role in the sense of, because I have the mentality of trying to play a father. A father is supposed to guide, protect, take care of the children and the family. So was a husband.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, but if you think about it, so was a husband, but the role is still different because the husband also has a different role to play to his wife.
Yes. The husband needs to understand that he has a role. Yes, sure, he has the role of the father in the life of the spouse. No problem. Because again, this is a passage of rights from the father to the husband. So you will see an overlay sometimes where some of these roles begin to spill into each other and everything like that. What the husband needs to understand, or the wife needs to understand, is you are first and foremost my partner.
Yes.
Before you are my parent.
Right.
Yes.
Right? There's nothing wrong with you trying to be a parent, but don't son me.
Right.
Do you know what I mean by don't son me?
Nothing wrong. Don't be a parent. I don't think I think there's something wrong in that too.
No.
No, you gotta understand.
What I'm saying is this. Like like PL just said, right? You have a husband who wants to be like a father to you. He wants to guide.
He's the father of the home.
He's the father of the home, and
which is providing for his family, which is leading his family.
Doing
That's all roles of a father.
Exactly. But guess what? Here's the difference. Let's make a difference. For example, right now, if I tell my daughter she wants to buy a costume for a play in school, right? And I tell her, we can't get that customer right now. You follow what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I don't owe a new explanation
Explanation.
as to why we can't get it right
I
now.
said no, it's no.
You follow what I'm
girl.
saying? But I can be in the bedroom with you and I can say, I told her no, but honestly, I wish we could get it for her. The reason why we can't get it right now is A, B, C, and D. I owe you, my wife, an explanation,
so
not
it
her.
becomes a
In
problem.
other words, I'm bringing you into the inner
Right.
circle
So it becomes a
of
problem
decision
when
making.
you
Right.
feel you don't
Because
owe
we're
your spouse as well.
Because we're
That's
husband
what
and
you're
wife.
saying.
Exactly. But it becomes a problem though when you then look at your wife, for example, as a child.
Yes.
She wouldn't understand, Jerry.
And not even just that.
You know?
Or
you then bring in
don't
the
respect,
same way
you don't
the
respect
same way you
telling
treat
it,
your
right.
daughter and control your daughter and lead your daughter. You try to lead your wife that same
The
way.
same way.
I said this. Go and sit down. Like you're talking to your
Exactly.
daughter or
Your
you're talking
child.
to your
That's
child.
what I meant by don't
Right.
son me.
Exactly.
Because we're
Micromanaging
partners.
her. Like, you
We're
know what I'm saying?
partners. And yes,
So
you want
God,
to
she-
give guidance.
Who told you to buy gas?
You want to give guidance, you want to give advice, you want to lead and
Lead.
everything like that.
Right.
But at the same time, it's different from a wife versus a daughter.
Correct.
My daughter, I can say you have curfew at 10 p.m. Be back in the house,
Correct.
and she can be like, oh no, you live under my roof. This is my rules here.
Yes.
And you have no say.
Yes.
But when it's your wife, it's not your rules, it's
Yes.
our
Our
rules.
Yeah.
We came up with these rules together.
Yeah.
And so we are partners first and foremost before you try to son me.
Right.
That's the difference.
Yes.
And also another
Exactly.
danger that came to mind now is feeling unloved. Like
Break it down, break it down, break it down.
I'm trying to think of the right one word to use, but what I'm trying to get out of that is feeling like your spouse doesn't love you because he or she is not doing what you're expecting or what you're getting.
10-4. Got it. So, right. So because they're not meeting those expectations, you begin to feel like they don't love you.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh,
There's a lot of healing that needs to happen.
There's a
in that.
lot of healings that need to happen there. And this is what we're saying, because when it depends again on your unique situation and the kind of parents you had, because the place we look for love, the first place we look for love is from our parents.
Yes.
And when we don't get it, we begin to look for it in everywhere else. And this is sometimes why a lot of people fall into traps. They fall into gangs, they fall into prostitution, they fall into all kinds of stuff because they're looking for something in all the wrong places. They're trying to fill a void. And most of the time, you can see that this void was put in there by an action or inaction of a parent.
Yes. And most of the time you do realize the truth of the matter is nobody else can fill that void except for God.
It goes back to the Bible.
The person that created the void.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Because a lot of times they try to use their spouse, like we discussed a lot of times throughout this podcast, use their spouse to fill that void. And in trying everything, the spouse might even be cooperating, realizes that this is a thing, and tries his or her best to try to create what it is this person is looking for. But even then, they can't. You understand what I'm saying? Because no matter how much love your husband gives you, if you're seeking a fatherly love, you won't get that from a husband.
Yeah.
No matter how much love he pours in. And that's why you see a lot of relationship break, because what they go into it for, they're not getting.
I like that. If you're looking for a fatherly love from your husband, you're doing the wrong things. I love that.
Yes.
I love that.
And same way, if you're looking for a motherly love from your wife,
I love
the wrong thing.
Because you're hoping they can give what it is you didn't get.
Exactly.
But the truth is they can't.
Exactly.
Now, I want to ask a question based on what we're saying though. How can this unresolved, some of these things we're talking about comes from childhood, wounds, trauma, right? How can this, I think we've mentioned a few already, obviously, but how can it really manifest in the marriage?
It manifests in marriage, this unresolved thing. I mean, we've mentioned some of them. Number one, two is you begin to feel, we said resentment
Right.
before, but anger too.
Mm.
You just have a spouse that's just angry at the word.
And there's
And
nothing,
you
and
think
there's
it's
nothing you
It
can
has nothing
say
to do with you.
that
No,
it would.
There's nothing.
no,
There's
No.
nothing you can say. If it's not anger, it's fear.
Mm.
yeah.
Like oh my goodness, this thing is
It
for
is, it is,
real.
and like I'm
I used to
thinking,
date a girl.
of different things. Oh my
I'm
God.
telling you.
Yeah.
There's a girl I used to date a long time ago. If I came behind this girl, maybe jokingly, I just like, you know how you try to
Tickle.
tickle somebody from the back and you just use two fingers to
Mm.
tickle them. This girl would freak
Mm.
out.
Mm.
She would literally freak out, and I'm like, "Yo, you okay? I'm my bad. I was just playing with you." She's like, "Oh no, don't do that. Please don't do that. Don't ever do that." I'm like,
Mm.
trauma.
Yeah.
Like, whoa.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. So if it's not anger, where you're angry at the word,
Yes.
you're afraid.
Yes.
You're in a shell.
Mm.
Fearful.
You're fearful.
Yeah.
And then when you now finally find somebody that's supposed to be your safe place, you can't even feel safe around them.
Right,
them.
right.
You can't even feel
Right.
safe around them.
Yes.
No
because
matter how much
you don't
try.
know how to receive the love they
Mm.
bring.
Mhm. And then also, even to add to that, you're also guarded. You put up
True.
walls.
Yeah.
Some people get into relationships even with such traumas and still put up walls even while
True.
they're in a relationship.
Exactly.
And then they realize, how come something is not working out?
Yes.
You're saying this. We
Mhm.
know what the issue is, but for whatever reason, we're still missing
True.
it,
Yeah.
right? Because there's
True.
blocking it.
Yeah.
You
They're
know,
not
so-
really.
so-
They're not really handling the
No, they're not
they're
handling
not
the root of the issue.
exactly. What about a
Exactly.
sense of emptiness and dissatisfaction?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not
That's
enough.
a void. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Feeling not enough, or feeling like
Insecurity.
either they're feeling not enough or they're feeling like their spouse is not
Not
enough for them.
enough.
So they go out there to look for
True.
more.
Or more.
You know what I'm saying? And then there's also the issue of rejection.
Mm.
They feel rejected because why would my dad walk away from me?
Mm.
Why would my mom
And-
abandon me?
and
Or
afraid.
even the
And
opposite.
afraid.
It could even be-
Ooh, I don't know.
It could even be the opposite. Fear of rejection.
Right. I think we did
things that are
something similar to this in the early. I think it was early last year when we had this conversation about a husband and a wife that had a misunderstanding. I'm trying to think, and the guy said he wanted to take a walk. You remember?
Yeah.
That he wanted to take a walk, and the girl was freaking out, thinking he was
Freaking out.
leaving, and the mother was like, "He's coming back," and then she started crying, saying that he's
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
to leave. He's going to leave.
Fear of
And then he came back
fear
and
of
said,
that.
"I will
Fear of
never leave."
abandonment.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Fear of
Yeah,
abandonment, fear of
abandonment, fear of
rejection,
rejection.
and then looking for all these things in all the wrong
Mm.
places.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes a man will be with a wife, he would be looking for love from her best friend,
Hmm.
or looking for love from his best friend.
You know,
Living out his motherly
True,
expectations from somebody else's lens.
else.
Yeah.
Hmm. You know,
So it's like, I married you, but really I should have been with your best friend because she's more like my mom than you are.
Yeah.
I mean, you follow what I'm
It's
saying?
crazy, yeah.
It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy. But this is what we're saying. These are the dangers
and-
of unrealistic expectations, misplaced
expectation. You know,
expectations.
another
Yeah.
thing that could happen is now them repeating the same pattern of what they had gone through,
Which usually is what happened. Yeah.
and, you know, repeating that unhealthy
Yeah.
pattern again
Patterns.
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
marriage.
Yeah.
Now, as we begin to bring this to a close, I want us to discuss very quickly how can individuals, people that are married, people that find themselves in this situation, we've really wanted to spend some time to talk about the dangers of it, right? And also to point out that perhaps you may be going through this and you don't even know.
Very
Yeah.
true.
You don't even know, and
Some
you've never
people
really
don't.
identified them as
Very
a problem
Yeah. Some people don't.
until now. Or perhaps you have identified them, but you don't think that they're a problem, because the expectation is that you're my wife, you're my husband, you should be
Should
doing
have this,
this
yeah.
role. You should have this role. It is your responsibility if you're like a father to me.
Yeah.
It is your responsibility if you're like a mother to me. But then it gets a little crazy now when the expectation is not checked. So question is, how can how can individuals begin to identify and heal, right? Heal wounds caused by unmet parental needs. Obviously, it's a
personal thing. It starts
thing.
personal. I think your spouse can be supportive, and it would be ideal. It would be helpful, I should say, for your spouse to be understanding and supportive. But I think it's a personal thing that that person needs to first figure out a way to walk through it, and obviously pray to God about it, because it's only God that can offset that burden. It's a burden, and the Bible tells us to bring those burdens to Him because He's ready to take it off. So
Take it off.
I think that's the very first thing to do, but it would take one. There's a common saying that says, to resolve a problem, first of all, you must identify the problem. But if you do not identify the problem, then that person is not going anywhere. So the first thing is to identify that he or she has that problem. Understand that, yes, we might not be perfect in this relationship, but some of these things that are problems, especially things that I see as a problem, is really not originating from my spouse. It's originating from something that had happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe. Jesus, I remember the story I heard. I'm sorry for cutting you off. About this woman that they are having issues. They've been married for quite a while, having issues in bed, right? Not the actual process of it, but the initiation. Thank you very much. Because the moment the man tries to touch her, she flips, like she triggers.
She freaks out.
Triggers. And the times they actually have sex, like husband is like talking about it, having a lot of problem about it, then he's like, okay, come and do, or something like that. So, and then she would enjoy it.
She's not there.
But the initiation, so it's like they're not having as much intimacy as they should, because many times the husband would just leave her alone. You get what I'm saying? So now I'm thinking about it. So that just came to my mind. So it's like, and then she thinks about it, and it's like, it's really not the problem is not really originating from her husband. The problem is not really originating from the fact that the husband is treating her bad. Is because she was maltreated by her father when she was young. She was raped. You get what I'm saying? And now it's like she can't trust anyone close to her.
Jesus.
I think in to answer that question, picking it up from where PK just left, and I was thinking about this as you were talking. One of the biggest issues, you have broken people, individuals that have not yet yielded getting into a relationship. We need to take it back to prior the marriage and relationship. Please. There's things you might not want to accept it, but don't think somebody can heal you or this person. If I get into this relationship, or if I get this, it will heal something else that it doesn't have to do with.
Right.
that's the mentality a lot of people have.
Yeah.
Number one, they're not honest with themselves. They haven't accepted the fact that this is a problem.
Yeah.
They sweep it under the rug like it's an issue.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, every time you throw the word help, counseling, therapy, it's like a taboo in like Black people, African American, Africans, Christians. It's like a taboo for them. But the truth is, a lot of times they need that because they need somebody to help pull it out of them.
Yeah.
And it might not be somebody they want to know them personally. It could just be a complete stranger that could help them do that.
Yeah.
So please understand that you need to be honest with yourself about this.
Yes.
You need to accept that it is an issue and you need to seek help.
Mm-hmm.
Healed people would have a better relationship and produce healed individuals.
Yeah.
If you're broken and you get into a relationship and it's still alive in that relationship and you start reproducing, it affects the next generation. So please, we need to get healed. We need to seek help, talk to people. With open communication, even with your spouse. Let your spouse know this is something I have gone through. It is unfair for somebody to get into a marriage and be finding that out then and there. Let your spouse know before you even get into marriage, before you get committed, and listen, I have this issue, this traumatic events that happened to me. I'm still trying to figure myself out. You could get on this journey with me and help me and support me, and we could continue with our relationship, but understand that if there's some things that are red flags from you, it's probably stemming from this, and I need it fixed. If we don't accept that, if we don't put attention to that, you find a lot of people going into homes and having broken marriages because they've not healed from their trauma. Speak about these things. Talk to somebody about these things. And couples, please do premarital counseling, because you will find that these counselors will ask you questions that will bring out some of these things that you probably haven't thought about and talking about. It will bring it out.
The goal of this stuff is to help you navigate through those feelings. So sometimes the person may not even see it as a problem until you have a third party
brings it out, or somebody points it out. Yeah.
And then another thing you can also do too that I was thinking about is when you notice a pattern in your home, in your marriage, with your husband, with your wife, write it down. Note it. Why are you always angry when I do or when I say, when this happens, when that happens? Note it. Number one. Number two, in your observation, there's usually always a pattern. If you're paying attention, there is a pattern, always a pattern. And then in your observation too, look at their origin, their background, where they came from. One way you could do that is observe their parents, for example. You know what I'm saying? Observe their parents and say, you know, you're very much like your parents in this regard. Have you ever noticed that? I've observed you, and I've observed your dad, I've observed your mom, and I see the same traits going on.
And it's, I just wanted to point that out, because sometimes you even say something to me sometimes, and it's funny because we laugh about it, but sometimes it'd be like for example, myself, and we've noticed it in our daughter too, we have a habit of announcing things before we do it. We have a habit of, I'm coming, I want to go use the bathroom, I need water, I want to go drink water. Like, we announce it before it happens. I do that a lot, and we started noticing it in our daughter. Like, you don't have to tell us, just go do it. But she will announce it, and then Mom was like, you know, your mom also does the same thing.
Hear this. My daughter does it. My wife does it. Her mom does it.
That's 3 generations.
That's 3 generations deep of unsolicited announcements.
It's like, you don't gotta tell me you gotta pee, just go.
And this is me. And I love, you know me, I'm very quiet. I just be looking, I just be observing. Whenever my mother-in-law is here, it's vibes all the way, right? But it's always interesting watching all 3 of them.
It's like watching a movie.
My mother-in-law, my wife, and my daughter. And I'm just looking at them like, do y'all know y'all just do the same thing?
Oh my gosh.
The woman is hungry. She's like, okay, go in the kitchen. I just a little about you. Go use the bathroom. My wife will get up. I want to go use the bathroom. I'm like,
Why are you
God,
telling
my
us? My daughter then started doing the same thing. I want to go
I'm
pee.
like,
Okay,
no,
so
this
go.
can't, this can't be going. But before we close,
That's on a lighter note.
and that's on a lighter note, right? That's on a lighter note. Now, how can? But that's what I'm saying. Observe them,
Yes.
write down those patterns that you see
Yes.
going on, and then observe their origin, like where they came from.
Yeah.
Mostly their parents or whoever raised them or whatever environment they came from. For example, whenever I get on the phone with a New Yorker, one conversation, a statement, and you just start hearing defense mechanism like calm down.
Yeah, in New York,
Calm
I'm
down. You know, calm down. But
It's a
again,
woman boy. Their blood.
I can't blame them though. It's where they,
It's where they come from. Your blood got a boil over there.
You know what I'm saying? So observe that and then note it. There's somebody that I know that left New York, is now living in Houston. Whenever you're talking to that guy, he's all mellow, all calm.
He doesn't have somebody yelling at him in the car like, "Watch where you going?"
So I told him like,
Who you looking at?
You know you've changed, right? He was like, "What you mean?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're not as cool as you."
Respectfully
speaking.
Oh my God.
How can premarital counseling address issues of misplaced expectation before marriage?
Yes.
Premarital counseling.
I brought that up, right? Because we all on this podcast did premarital counseling.
We sure did.
And it helped us a lot. In fact, I'm looking at one of the books that we got in premarital. I'm like, I gotta review that book again.
Yes,
because it brings up a lot of questions that sometimes you don't think about. Sometimes you're even afraid to bring up. And when somebody else's brings it up, you're kind of forced to kind of like open up a little bit. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this could bring light and shed light in some things or some gaps that you may already have in your relationship before you even say I do. And that's important to know. Premarital counseling is not just a check mark to get married. It's not I have to do it just to do it and go. No, there are questions. It dives into multiple different questions. Or whether it's finances, whether it's culture, whether it's how you're going to raise your children, whether it's what triggers you, whether it's what shapes you. It dives into different questions that would help bring out things that you need to talk about. You might not have to talk about it right then and there in front of the counselor, but it will stay in your head for you to go and be like, you know what? I thought about what this thing they brought. Expand on this matter that you said. I'm curious. I want to know more of it. It will open you up a little bit more to your partner in a way that maybe you're too shy to, or you're afraid to, or you just don't want to tap into those waters. It will open a can of interesting things to discuss before you then go and take that. And it's so important because yes, you can deal with this thing when you get married, but it's better to deal with it before you do. So that way when you get married, you know you've already handled those things already. It's not a shock or a surprise anymore. You know it's a work in progress. It's not something that's brand new to you and you're like, I don't know if I could deal with this. No, you knew this already before you entered into this marriage. Sorry, before you
right.
There's something. This is just even on a calmer note. Something that our counselor, our premarital counselor, our pastor in New York, brought up during counseling. She would ask you, what is something as simple as what's your genotype? Right? People don't think about things like that. They don't think about the importance of something like that. Why does it matter why does it matter to know your genotype?
It's a big deal now in Nigeria.
Does it matter in your marriage or relationship?
They make that a big deal now in Nigeria.
Yes, in premarital counseling
in Nigeria, to ask that question before they know, but now they do. It's because it has caused a lot of problems with the babies coming out,
children. Exactly. Yeah.
We gotta go. But before we go, I want to talk about. I think one of the things we talked about, the part of the dangers that come up when you have misplaced expectation is. We said anger, fear, resentment, feeling of rejection. I think we said also forgiveness, the power of forgiveness. And I also mentioned too that to the glory of God, all of us on this podcast right now, when we first started this conversation, we're conditioned to think positive things. Conditioned because we're like,
go from
all glory to God.
All glory to God.
But we then have to come out of our own bag and realize that there are not so glamorous situations out there that people are really dealing with.
Yes.
Look at what PK just said. One of the example he gave, the wife not being triggered by a husband touching her, coming from abuse from her father,
Years ago, by the way.
and then years ago,
Yes.
more than 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
imagine that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So now there's nothing one can do about what has happened.
Correct.
But the thing about it is, the things that has happened has a way of
Holding.
placing a stronghold
Yes.
on someone,
Yes. It's a stronghold.
unless you figure out a way to forgive and let go.
Yeah.
My question is, how can the power of forgiveness, does the power, and I want to say the power of forgiveness, it's not just forgiveness.
Yes.
The power, because we have to understand that there is power in forgiveness.
There is.
Ooh,
There is.
my
Yes.
God. That song says, there is power in the name of Jesus to break every chain.
Yes.
There is power
Yes.
in forgiveness.
Yes. And
Yeah. Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they were doing.
Yes.
That statement sounded so simple.
Mm.
But he was saying, by the power invested in me, I have authority and dominion and strength and grace to release them.
Yes. That's what it is. That's
My
what
God.
it is. It's a release.
My God.
It's a
release.
release.
It's a release.
And it's a powerful thing to do.
Yes.
How can the power of forgiveness of your parents?
That many parents don't know that. You know, I think we talked about this in couple in thank God for the podcast topics we've handled in the past, and we talked about this sometimes ago when we talk about some parents do not understand the power in saying I'm sorry.
Yes.
Forgive, like you said, like you rightfully said, forgiveness releases emotional hold on someone, strong hold. It frees. It's like you free them. It's like as simple as that word sorry is. It holds a lot of power. But especially African parents. Come on, Sha.
Oh no!
Yeah, actually, it's not.
Oh, I have seen some things. It's not just African parents. It's this thing of, I brought you into this world. Yes, I may have offended you, but because I'm your parents, I can never be wrong.
Right.
It's something that needs to be
remember the topic we did sometimes ago about this woman that used a child's credit.
Yes. It's crazy, but really, forgiveness is a release. It helps you to release past hurts.
It prevents
helps you
cycles of bitterness too. Generational.
Exactly.
Ends it over there.
Yes.
I've heard a saying from somebody. The person said, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yes.
Because what it does is, it's you it's affecting.
Yes.
True.
When you hold on to the resentment, when you hold on to the hurt, when you hold on to the pain, the other person can just be living their life and have even forgotten about it.
Yeah.
You are the person that needs to try and work hard to let it go.
Yes.
Because the minute you let it go, you're free. There's freedom in forgiveness.
Yes.
So it's not really the person that's hurting if you don't forgive them. Forgive them. It's you.
Yeah.
Because every time you think about it, something boils in you.
Yes.
It messes up your mood. It breaks your heart. It does things to you more so than the person that you're upset about.
Yes.
So forgiveness is not for the other person. It's really for you.
And another thing we have to also understand is that when you forgive, you put the matter in God's hands, and you let Him handle the situation as He sees fit. And the reason why we don't forgive is because sometimes we think it's in our power to forgive. Jesus didn't say, I forgive them. He said, Father, you forgive them,
Right.
for they know not what they do.
Mm.
It's not for me to
It's not
forgive.
for you to forgive.
It's for me to
God.
let go
Yeah.
and let God. And it is now for God to forgive them, because you don't even have the power to hold anything
Yeah.
over them.
Yeah.
What you want to do is release yourself
Yeah.
from whatever stronghold that thing may have over you. So it doesn't stop you from being able to move forward in life. And it doesn't stop you from being able to see the good in other people and even in yourself. Do you know forgiveness is so strong that when you don't know how to forgive somebody else, you don't even know how to forgive yourself?
True.
Yeah.
That's
A person gets
what
raped.
Pierre
So imagine.
just said, that it starts from you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As a person gets raped and starts to blame themselves for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And then, yes, they want to forgive and move on, but they can never forgive themselves forever putting themselves in that kind of position.
Right.
Now, can I also say this?
Y'all shouldn't have started this one, because y'all
we're
gonna
about
keep
to
us
leave.
here.
I just wanted to say this too for those that are out there, because
I'm tapped out, y'all.
some people can see it as, okay, yeah, you're saying forgive. This person keeps hurting me, right? This person keeps bringing pain to me. Forgiveness doesn't mean you then go back to normalcy like nothing happened. You know how some people say, I forgive, but I can't forget, right? Because there's some times where you need to release yourself of the toxicness.
Toxicity.
Because you need peace. When you want peace in your life, you have to let some things go. Letting it go doesn't mean you bring that thing back in your life. Does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because you can forgive, but you can keep the person as arm's length because you don't want it to happen again. I don't want to have another reason to have to forgive you. Don't put me in a position to be in this state again where I have to now work out a way to forgive you. Keep yourself at a distance from people that are toxic in your life. You want peace to reign in your life. Keep a distance. But letting it go, like you said, is for you. Because when you let it go, it won't even bother you. You won't even think about it anymore.
Yeah.
In fact, that person being at arm's length doesn't even do anything to you.
Yeah.
You're at peace. You've moved on with your life.
Fact.
All right. The Bible says in Isaiah chapter 26, verse 3, talking about God, it says, you will keep in perfect peace those whose mind are stayed on you. Their mind are steadfast because they trust in you. The reason why I like that verse is because peace and fulfillment in marriage really comes from trusting God. It's not from placing unrealistic expectations or misplaced expectations on your spouse. And marriage is a beautiful partnership, but it's not a replacement for healing wounds of your past. Healing wounds of your past. You will keep in perfect peace those whose mind are stayed on you, or those whose mind are steadfastly stayed on you. True growth happens when we allow God to meet our expectations, our deepest needs, and we trust Him to guide us in building healthy, balanced marriage and relationship. And by doing so, we release our partner to be just that, partners.
Yes.
Not a substitute for what we missed growing up. We allow them to be our partner because our mind is stayed on God and He is our peace.
Thank you so much, PY. Thank you, PK, for such an insightful conversation. All right, so here's our news coverage for the week. In federal news, the Biden administration, which just left, has implemented a new Childcare Expansion Act, which allocates $10 billion in federal funding to increase access to affordable childcare services nationwide. That is amazing. This initiative is designed to support working parents, and ease the financial burden of childcare, especially for low and middle income families. Do you know how expensive childcare is? This is very
Talk about
hopeful. Advocates believe that this act is a step forward in addressing childcare crisis in the United States, and it's expected to impact millions of families positively. To learn more, visit congress.gov.
guys. Thank you very much, PL, for that quick update. Thank you, PY. This was really good. Anyway, as we prepared for our weekend, like we
Yes.
love, here is the MDB quote of the week. A happy marriage doesn't mean you have a perfect spouse or a perfect marriage. Let me take that again. A happy marriage doesn't mean you have a perfect spouse or a perfect marriage. It simply means you've chosen to look beyond the imperfections in both.
Beautiful.
And that's by Van Weaver.
Wow.
Beautiful.
A happy
That's
marriage
perfect.
doesn't mean you have a
Perfect
perfect spouse or a perfect marriage.
Yep.
It simply means you've chosen to look beyond the
Imperfection.
imperfections
Beyond.
in both.
Beyond.
All right, that is all we have for today. I hope we've shared a tip or two to help solidify your kingdom union, not only with yourself, but also with God, and most importantly, but also with others, and most importantly with God on today.
Yes, don't forget to like, to share with your friends and family, hit the subscribe button, and comment down below.
And until next time, be the light,
Be the salt.
and remember,
All things
All
are
things are
possible
possible.
if you believe.